Hi everyone. So today I want to show you how to make what is called fermented porridge, or sometimes it's called soured porridge. And it only is sour if you ferment it for a long time. What we're going to do is we're just going to ferment it overnight, so it's not going to be sour at all, but you can certainly ferment it longer if you like. So what I'm using here are steel cut oats. You could use rolled oats as well, but you cannot use quick cooking oats because they just don't work well with this. You can also use other grains. You can use wheat berries or spelt berries. You could use quinoa. You could use brown rice. However, when you're using a whole grain, you have to crack them in order to expose some of the inside in order for it to ferment, because otherwise if it's left in its full whole grain form, it will not ferment very well. So this is why we're using the steel cut oats, because these are nice and cracked. As I mentioned, you can use the rolled oats. You can also use millet flakes, quinoa flakes, kamut flakes, spelt flakes. Whatever you can find in the health food store will work very nicely with this. And it's a very simple process. So we're going to take the water and we're going to add some yogurt. And you don't need a lot of yogurt, maybe a tablespoon. And I'm just going to put that in and give this a bit of a stir. It doesn't have to be mixed well. This is all going to eventually turn into one big thick goo, so it doesn't really matter how well this is mixed. And then you're just going to add it to the steel cut oats. Just give it a little stir. And cover it. Now you can cover it with a cloth. I'm just going to loosely put plastic on it. I'm not going to put it on tightly because you want air in here. When grains ferment, they need air. They need the wild yeast from the air. And so we're just going to leave that loosely on there. And you want to keep it in a fairly warm spot, something that's at least 75 degrees or 22, 23, 24 degrees Celsius. So 75 degrees Fahrenheit, 24 Celsius, somewhere around there. It could be 77 degrees Fahrenheit. Doesn't really matter. It just needs to be nice and warm. And you can do this the night before. And then what we're going to do is cook it after it has fermented for at least 7 hours. You can do 10 hours, you can do 12 hours, you can do a full 24 hours if you like. It doesn't really matter, but at least 7 hours. And what you're going to see is that the moisture that's in here, the water with the yogurt, is going to absorb somewhat into the steel cut oats. And this is actually an advantage for cooking purposes, because when you go to cook it, you can then take less time because some of the water is already absorbed in. And it usually cuts the cooking time in about half. You'll also could eat this. So say you fermented this for 10 hours. You could eat this straight if you liked. It's not very nice. It doesn't have a nice texture to it like oatmeal, but you could do that. And so that's all we're going to do for now, and then we'll come back to this in a few hours. I should also mention that I'm using yogurt here, but you could use kefir. Kefir will add even more fermentation benefits to this because it is more potent than yogurt. But maybe you don't have kefir, maybe it's not available where you are. Yogurt works just as well. And some people want to know whether or not you can use flavored yogurt. Well, first of all, you have to make sure the yogurt you're using is real yogurt. So this is a traditionally fermented yogurt, which means they fermented it for about 4 hours at least. Most commercial yogurts are only fermented for about an hour. And you can always tell because if you read the ingredient list, you will see that on the label it'll say milk and or skim milk powder or whatever kind of yogurt it is. Hopefully it just says milk or milk products and bacteria culture or live culture or something like that. It'll just have a couple of ingredients on it. If you see a lot of gums and starches and other things added, this is not a natural yogurt. And they have to add the gums when they're making commercial yogurt because they're only fermenting it for about an hour, and it just doesn't thicken up in 1 hour. It takes at least 4 hours. When I make my yogurt, I ferment it for 6 hours, so to get it nice and thick. So make sure you're using real yogurt, and therefore by saying that, if you wanted to use one that is flavored like I like a vanilla yogurt, and yes, it'll have a little bit of sugar, that is not problematic. It's very minor amount. It's usually evaporated cane juice, which is low glycemic, but it's so little anyway, it doesn't really matter. And again, even if you use plain yogurt, you are going to flavor this after you cook it anyway. So you get to play with this the way you like and have it flavored as you like to eat it. So this process is more about having some culture in there that can ferment. And of course, you can use coconut yogurt as well, so you don't have to use a dairy-based one if that doesn't agree with you. And it's a really simple technique. All right, so it's been about, 8-9 hours since we soaked the steel cut oats. So I'm just going to take this off here. And as you can see that some of it has been absorbed into the oats, but there's still liquid there. If you were using rolled oats, then this would all be absorbed in. You can eat it like this. It's very chewy, but you could eat it like this if you wanted. But most traditional uses are that you cook it. So I've put it into the pot, and I'm going to add 3/4 of a cup of water. I'm going to add a pinch of sea salt, and I like cinnamon with my oatmeal, so I'm going to add a 1/4 teaspoon. You could add up to 1/2 teaspoon. It depends on your taste palette. I'm going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. Just going to give that a little stir, and we're going to bring it to a boil. Now, because it's been soaked, it may not take as much time to cook as it typically cooks when you just cook the steel cut oats by itself. So this is another advantage. You can do this the night before, just get up, cook it quickly, and then it's ready to eat for breakfast in the morning. So you can see that it's starting to boil now, and you just want to get it up to a reasonably good boil. And then you're going to lower the temperature because you want to give the oats time to absorb the water, and if it's too high a temperature, then it's going to evaporate the water too fast before it can be absorbed into the oats. So we're going to lower this to medium to see how that is. All right, so that looks like it's a pretty good boil. If I lower it a bit more, that's a very slow boil. That might be too low, so we'll just leave it on the medium setting here. And we will come back to this when the water has been absorbed. All right, so you can see that this is thickened up quite a bit. All right, so now all we have to do is turn this off and transfer this back into our bowl. And now we can dress this. So I'm just going to let that settle a bit. Now I like to put milk in my oatmeal, and you can use organic whole milk, or you can use coconut milk, whatever milk choice is yours, you can use. And since we just cooked out what good bacteria was in there, what you can do is add a little bit of yogurt to the milk. So I'm just going to add another tablespoon and mix it in there. And again, this is a taste preference. You could do less milk and more yogurt. It's up to you. You could do all yogurt if you wanted. All right, so we're just going to pour that on. And can also add some maple syrup. Just adding about a tablespoon. And then what we're going to do is throw on some fresh blueberries. And we will cut up banana, throw that in. And then I'm going to top it with some pistachio nuts. And there you have it. It's ready to eat. It only took about, 8 minutes total to cook. So normally steel cut oats take 10 to 20. This took 5 to 10 because we soaked it, so we saved some time. We've added some prebiotic fiber with the blueberries, the bananas, the milk, and the pistachio nuts. Plus we have the resistant starch that's in the oats, and of course we have the probiotics with the yogurt that we added to the milk. All right, so there's a very simple way to ferment some oats, and you can do this also, by the way, if you have millet flakes or quinoa flakes. You can do it with the rolled oats, it doesn't matter. And this is a really great way to increase the digestibility, make the nutrients more bioavailable in the oats. And of course, now you've topped it up with some great whole foods that makes it a really nice breakfast full of good substances that will help build gut health.